So I want to talk a bit more about, which is coming on from the way the mind works, talk more about this stuff we talked a bit about at the end of the day, emptiness. Talk about, you see, okay, so we think, well, how do you apply that? What's the teaching there? What do you do with that information? It all seems so abstract, you know. So one simple way of putting it is what Buddha's saying is, nothing's set in stone. Nothing's, this ignorance. I've talked before about fundamentalist people. That's what ignorance causes. The more of this particular state of mind called ego grasping, its function, we've all got it, okay? We've all got it to whatever degree. But people who've got it seriously are the ones who've got massive attachment, massive aggression, massive anger, massive neurosis. And basically, the Buddha says, well, the animal realm is that. Animals have exactly the same mind as we have, but they can only access their delusions. And so their ignorance is a billion to their ego grasping, which brings narrow-mindedness and fixedness and concreteness and absolute, and therefore infinite more attachment and infinite more aggression and infinite more arrogance and infinite more jealousy and infinite more all the suffering. Animals have that. They can't access their virtues. It's the same model of the mind that we refer to all the creatures. It's kind of interesting. So we look at humans who've got very strong ego grasping. They've got very strong attachment, very strong aggression, like these fundamentalist, narrow-minded people. That's the way these delusions function. And we're all on a spectrum of those same delusions. It's a question of degree. This is the universal view that Buddha has about all samsara. It's a model that refers to all sentient beings. I mean, you can see jealousy, pride, arrogance among animals. You can see the boss animals, the victim animals. You can see it exactly the same. Just they're more stupid. I'm not trying to be mean about animals. They're more idiotic than we are. But we're ignorant humans too. We're stubborn, stupid, ignorant. The more of this ego grasping, the more stupidity. The more fixed, the more concrete, therefore the more craving, the more aggression. Look at humans. We might as well be animals, some of the things we do, That's why as humans, our saving grace is our virtues. Our saving grace is our intelligence, our capacity to see things from a different point of view. And that's the key to emptiness. When you've got a very fixed, narrow mind, that means you have zero understanding of this emptiness business. The flip side of emptiness is seeing that things are interdependent. Things are relative, things are conventional, things, seeing things from a different point of view. Having that capacity, that's the capacity of wisdom. And that leads you to this idea of emptiness, which seems again abstract to us. So a way to apply this idea in daily life is that nothing's set in stone. So if you have a very fundamentalist mind, there's nothing in a million years that will ever change your mind. You believe that, Barack Obama was a gay prostitute. Nothing in the universe will cause you to see differently. That's ignorance. That's how ego grasping works. Not only, you said that's where you can see it, but you can see that they made up something, isn't it? That's made up. It's not true. You can see it. But that's what all the delusions do. They make up something. So attachment in everybody's mind makes up a delicious cake. Anger makes up an ugly person. It's all this ego grasping is, which is a more subtle, more profound delusion that informs all the others. It's the biggest lie of all. It's the deepest lie. It makes things seem, not only does attachment makes the cake look delicious, anger makes the person look ugly. Well, ignorance informs both of those and makes it look delicious from its own side, concretely, absolutely. Makes the person look ugly from their own side, absolutely. All Buddha says is nothing exists in the way that we think they do. It's our delusions that are informing us and cause things to appear that way. And the more rigid your mind is, the more deep this ignorance, the more extreme your neuroses. So my friend's in prison. Okay, there's conventional reality and there's ultimate, like we talked. So conventionally you could define a prison as an ugly house where you're sent when you're naughty and you can't escape. That's a pretty good definition, isn't it? Well, guess what? Remember I said about the cup, you have to not just say it's a cup, say that it's a flat bottom container that holds your tea. You have to prove it does that. Otherwise we can say anything is anything, and that's chaos. You've got to say cup holds tea. Well, I'll prove it to you. I don't just say believe it's a cup. So I pour my tea, and guess what? It holds it. Well, let's prove that a prison fits its definition. Usually, believe me, they are ugly houses, and you are sent there when you're naughty, and you can't escape. And you have very little freedom. That's a fact. So it functions in exactly that way, but this is Buddha's point. If it were that way concretely, if it were that way absolutely, if it were that way in its bones, nobody could ever be happy there. But I can prove it's not true. Many of my friends in prison have become happy because they've changed their interpretation of prison. That's proving emptiness, that nothing is set in stone. Everything is something conventionally, but we think it is that way absolutely. We think it is that way definitely, and therefore we completely go crazy. But basically Buddha says we make these things up, and then it becomes like that. But then we forget that we made it up. We forget that we called it that. We forget that we made a prison. Where do you think prisons came from? Right out of the sky. We created them. They come from human minds. So as one Lama said, we're all like children who draw a lion and then become afraid of it. So in one sense, what we're saying is big picture, long-term view, that all of the universe, all the world, the things we think and see and do and say and blah, 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 all the events, all the actions, all the people, all the things, including ourselves, we have this instinctive belief that they're set in stone. This is who I am. Everything is like that. That's the fundamentalism. You can see something's mind is so stubborn, so proud, they will never change their mind. That's what ignorance causes. That's what ego grasping does. That's the worst delusion. So this view of there being no self in the way we think there is, it's really quite a subtle way of talking about it, very abstract to us. But the broad point is what it's saying, nothing is set in stone. We can change the way we see things, we know that. That's the way you apply it to us every day. Like woman on death row in Florida, amazing. I decided, I'm not a prisoner, I'm a monk. I'm not in a cell, I'm in a cave. That's a perfect way of applying emptiness every day. Emptiness meaning, not nothingness. Emptiness meaning, well, it's an abstract use of the word, many get used to how they use it. Emptiness meaning that that prison cell, there's nothing there that makes it a prison cell in itself. That I can change the way I call it. And then when I call it something different, it becomes that. So in the more advanced teachings in the compassion wing, which we are going to be talking about more, there's a whole level of practice. They call it, we talked about it last week, transforming problems into happiness. Meaning, the usual view of a problem is that means a thing we can't stand. So a problem, as far as we're concerned, exists in itself as a problem. We never think we can interpret it differently. We never think that a problem is something we call a problem and that's why it's a problem. We think, and this is the point, we think it's a problem in itself and it's been dumped upon me. But if we understand this view about interdependence, about how things are kind of, we can see them differently, just like that woman. She transformed problems into happiness. My friend Mitch on death row has changed the way he interprets his life. Relatively, he's in a garbage dump of a prison and he's seen as one of the worst people on earth because he's an evil monster who kills people. He doesn't buy into those labels. He knows his mind. He said it was very distressing recently when he read a newspaper story in the local paper about how one aspect of his appeal had been turned down. So that he read the commentary about this evil person called Mitch Willoughby who murdered these 3 people. And it's like it was shocking to him. He said to read this commentary about this monster on death row, monster who killed people. He said, I didn't recognise it. That wasn't me. But that's the world's view. Quite shocking to him. He's changed the way he sees it all. This is the meaning, the things aren't set in stone. Emptiness is referring, meaning when you see it, emptiness is referring to the absence in that prison of its being a concrete, real, definite prison. The absence in that self of there being a real, vivid, concrete I in there that runs the show. The absence in that anything, that cake, of being delicious from its own side, the absence of that, which is what we have to get to common eyes. It's once we understand the use of the word, it's not so cosmic to us. We just have to get used to the use of the way of how they talk. It's quite specific. So it's only very simply a simple way to apply these teachings about interdependence and emptiness into daily life is simply to attempt to see something from another point of view. It sounds so simple, but it's beyond profound. So the person who thinks that Barack Obama was a gay prostitute, as she said, how else did he pay for his drugs? She said. For her to actually realise it's simply a viewpoint she's got, and then maybe it's not true, and perhaps I should see him differently. No, that's impossible for many people, and what that means, they've got this ignorance really deeply, and that's the root delusion. That's what it means, ignorance. You're fixed in your view, and it appears to you that way, and you believe it 1 billion%. That's the rigidity of this ego grasping. So having the capacity to actually know that you can see something from a different perspective, that's a miracle. And that's wisdom. It's a flexibility, it's a spaciousness. It's not concrete. You can see when we're miserable, when we're full of self-pity and victim mentality. I'm hopeless, I'm no good, I'm bad, I can't do it. You know, when a kid is suffering, that's the same mind as Barack Obama was a gay prostitute. I am bad. No, you're really nice already, you've got good qualities. No, I haven't. Isn't it? We're very convinced. That's why we've got low self-esteem and self-pity. It's not being horrible. Ego is self-pity. It sounds awful. But it's true. We're very determined. I'm no good. I'm determined. Or depression. Look at depression. I'm not trying to criticize this. When you're really depressed, build up over years, you 1 billion% believe that view, don't you? And people stay in that state for years and never get out of it. Why? The same as the woman who says that Barack Obama was a gay prostitute. They believe their story. This is not trying to be mean to us. It's not blaming us. But this is the way ignorance functions, ego grasping. We're convinced that whatever we feel is true. And we don't think it's even a viewpoint. We think there's an objective reality there. You know? So it's really hard to change our minds. It's hard to even see that there's a possibility that I can change my mind. And when it comes to something like depression, because in our world it's considered a mental illness because we found pills to fix it. I'm so happy. And we found the drug, you know, so it's a real serious disease in the books. Whereas if no one goes to a doctor and gets a pill for anger, and they'll make multi-billion trillion dollars and they find one to stop anger, wow. We give it a concrete reality of a disease out there. Therefore, it's not my fault. This is a tragedy. It's not my fault. Oh, I've got a mental illness. Oh, it's not my fault. It's my chemicals. I'm not being mean about it. Because we want to get off the hook. Because we feel guilty and we think it's my fault. And it's all this is rubbish, you know. But owning that actually depression is a state of mind. Yes, the body plays a role because we are very susceptible to all the conditions of the world. There's no question. Like me, when I was crazy when I was a kid, I had to take responsibility for my anger. But as a child, it was always impossible not to be angry when I'm squeezing along with 6 other kids all screaming and yelling. So when my mother puts me in boarding school, like a miracle, overnight, everything's different. Wow. So simple. Okay, compassion. It's like junior school is all about controlling your body and your speech. First of all, then you can start to, then there's 2 extra components here to really help you do junior school well. And that is, you know, the first level of it is you make a decision to harness the physical and verbal energy. You make a decision to begin to attempt to not kill, not lie, not steal, not harm others with your body and speech, or for yourself, already stupendous. There's a really powerful way to do that when a person may let's say decides to become a formal Buddhist, and there's a whole real thing you do to formally take refuge as a Buddhist, for example. So that means you're committing yourself, you've decided you like Buddha's teachings, you've thought about them, you recognise your suffering and you want to change and you like Buddha's method. So you make the decision and then you commit yourself formally. The next little step is, and often can be at the same time, you will increase your wish not to harm sentient beings by living in vows of morality. And the Buddha's teachings, Buddha loves his vows. It's something very potent, very powerful, mentally, psychologically, when you make a firm decision to do something. And we know this. You can go, oh, I should lose weight. Yeah, I must lose weight. Oh, I should go on a diet. But 27 years later, you finally say, I will lose weight. And guess what? Now you'll start because you're committed. Should and would are useless. If only, should, would, not fair, wow, poor me, I should go on a diet. Or people might meet you and they'll go, you must come for dinner one day. And I'll say, yes, I'd love to come for dinner. But what happens when we say, please come to dinner and fix the calendar? 27 years later, yes, I'd love to come for dinner. But until you say, please come to dinner, until you make a decision, it will never happen, will it? And we can't distinguish between wishing and wanting and deciding. Big difference. So a vow is like a very powerful decision. And in fact, it's done formally. And this is really, the more we understand karma, like I mentioned before briefly, Oscar sees it as a mouse in his kitchen, but he doesn't even see it. So there was no recognition there's the mouse, there's no intention I will kill the mouse, and there's therefore no motivation. But his foot goes on the mouse and the mouse dies, but there's no karma because his mind is not involved. Well, it's the same here. Right at this moment, we're probably not killing sentient beings, are we? And the reason is not because we're good people, it's because there's no ant there that does not kill. If an ant came along, then you have a moment you think, oh, well, I'll kill it or I won't kill it. And then you decide, I will not kill the ant, and you avoid killing it. It's only then that you put a karmic seed in your mind of the very virtuous action called not killing. It's got to be a conscious thing. We're not killing, although the ants are very happy. But we're not creating any karma of not killing. And we have to have lots and lots in our little bank vaults of karmic seeds. We need to have lots of very strong, intentional seeds of not killing, not stealing, not lying. It's a really important point in terms of the way we create karma. Merely not killing, we're very nice people, that's great. But we're not creating any virtuous karma of not killing. So, the Buddha talks about vows. Lama Zopa praises vows. They say that this powerful decision that a person makes to actually say, kind of like define themselves as a non-killing, non-harming person, and to commit themselves in their life to live a life like that, that's intense. That's powerful. That's very potent, very delicious. So that a person who formally takes refuge, they will formally take vows, and you sit in front of somebody who for you represents the Buddha. And then what you sort of do is plug it into this kind of power source that can track itself back in an unbroken chain of human beings right back to the time of the Buddha. He really puts a lot of stock in vows. And so there's these 5 lay vows that a person at some point decides if they want. You vow, I will, until the day I die, never kill. That means intentionally. We're killing just by existing. Our body is like a walking zoo. Really and truly. It would make us vomit if we saw how many creatures are living in and on our bodies. We can't see them because we're so clean and nice, Apparently they love our faces because of the big fat paws, like little caves for all these creatures to live. Under our arms like a zoo. Billions of sentient beings, you can see with a microscope, living in and on our body. It's like having crawling creatures all over you, we'd be repulsed. So we kill them all the time. It's by existing we're killing. By walking we're killing. By driving we're killing. By breathing we're killing. So we can't avoid that. It's the nightmare of samsara. But we can make a strong decision. I will not kill. And that's when the karma starts being strong. You create the cause to program your mind with a strong intention never to kill. And then what happens is next life you wake up like that little boy with instant compassion for the lice in his head and no thought in his life ever to kill. It's the fruit of the intentional decision not to kill. context of vows is said to be super potent, you know. We have to think about this because it's inherent to us. But I think it's the same as when you make a decision, a strong decision, when you go on a diet, you know. I will not eat this, this, and this. And then that's when it becomes serious. When you decided. You won't have it for its own side, believe me. But when you decide. So the same here. There's no karma, we can't purify it. I know many of my friends in prison were blissed out by this. But they are deeply depressed because they're killed. And you can't bring it back. You can't get the person to forgive you. So what can you do? You're just a bad person. You go to hell, you know. So many of my friends in prison love the purification practice, were so kind of encouraged by it. And like all these practices, it's a psychological practice, it's not some holy thing. And it's got 4 parts to it, and it's really logical. I like to think of it in terms of being the 4 R's, you remember them easily. The first step is regret. So okay, the analogy that the nuns always use, they always talk about, use the context of if you've eaten poison. So we all know immediately and naturally, the moment someone says, God, there was poison in the dinner, you just say poison, you'd be shocked. You'd go, oh my God, what I'm eating, I can't believe myself. And then you go, quick, where's the doctor? Well, that's the attitude of regret. And what that means is this, you've just acknowledged you did something dumb that will bring suffering to you, and you don't want suffering. It's pretty obvious. So naturally you'll say, quick, who can I turn to give me the antidote? But we don't have this, we're so complicated with our negativity, we feel like a bad person, so we have guilt instead. I remember the Dalai Lama one time was very clear in distinguishing when someone asks, what's guilt? What's the difference between this attitude that they call regret, or there's many words in English we use for it, or this attitude we all know very well called guilt. He said, guilt, you look in the past and you go, I did this, and I did that, and I did this, and then you go, and I'm a bad person. That's guilt. That's anger against yourself. You look at it, someone else that you did this, and you did that, and you did this, and you're a bad person. That's anger. So this is identical, but it's against yourself. And we all love to have this one. It's kind of automatic. You know, for us it's a logical deduction that I've done something naughty, I must be a bad person. So in other words, we over-exaggerate it. We over-exaggerate it. That's what all delusions do, they over-exaggerate. Is that a hand?
Yep.
Yeah.
What do you feel, what does it say about guilt you feel about what other people have over you, let's say?
Have what?
When you are a very, let's say, responsible person, and you feel guilty because your next action might affect them in some way, not negatively, but the way they feel about it, and you're guilty about that. You're always guilty, Jewish guilt.
So would you say that again more clearly? I missed that, I'm so sorry. Tell me this kind of guilt that you're talking about.
Like the guilt, like the Jewish, the mother guilt, that they always make you feel guilty if you don't do what they...
You mean manipulating other people to make them guilty?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll discuss that in a minute. Let's look at this one first. Thank you, that's a really good point. So this guilt will fall into this trap very easily, we all have it automatically, you know? And that's why all these delusions, as I'm saying, their function is to over-exaggerate. Well, guilt over-exaggerates your madness. Just like my mother's guilt over-exaggerated her role in causing the suffering in the family. You understand? Completely, as mothers do. But regret, as he's always said, is really it's a very different attitude, and it takes time to cultivate it. We have to consciously do it. It's the same. The first part is exactly the same. You look at the past, and you recognize you did this, you did that, you did this. Negative things, right? But then you have to change the conclusion. And you have to go, what can I do about it? So what was the poison? No, you know, when you eat poison, when you point out to me that I just ate poison in my dinner, I will not go, oh, I ate poison, I'm such a bad person. I mean, there's no way in the world I do that. And every day I'm getting sicker and sicker and beating myself because I ate poison. I mean, you think I'm insane. You know immediately the reaction, because you recognize it's harming you, but we don't think of negativity like this. We think of it as something very concrete and something that someone else is going to criticize you for, so then you do it yourself. I'm a bad person. It's completely impotent. It's useless. It's an absurd, self-destructive state of mind. It's bizarre to say, oh, I'm so bad, I ate poison. So we've got to change the way we see this stuff, and this really does take time. So this regret is so wholesome. It's a wholesome attitude. Because what it's saying is, I killed, I lied, I stole, I badmouthed. And then when you have this guilt come, we've got to cultivate this. It doesn't come naturally. I've got to recognize that is harming me. That is sowing seeds in my mind that are growing away inside there, and there's no way I want the fruit of that, which will be my suffering, just like the poison. This really does take time, and this is the literal meaning of karma. It's got nothing to do with punishment, reward, or anything like that. It's a practical meaning. So this regret is a really wholesome attitude. What a fool I was. Well, I did this and did that and did this. I didn't know what I was doing. And I've sowed these seeds in my mind, and I don't want them to ripen as my suffering. So really this attitude of regret is like compassion for yourself. I keep saying, you have to cultivate it. It won't come naturally. Then naturally you then go, whom could I turn to? Quick, where's the doctor? And this gets us to the second step, reliance. So here, this is where we rely upon, as they put it, on the Buddha. And this is a huge difference between our relationship with God, let's say, or indeed, my husband, I want to forgive me. We tend, when we do a bad action to our husband, the first thing we have is guilt. I'm a bad person. But then what we have is this frantic panic that he's going to give up on me. And I'm desperate for him to get me off the hook, basically, which of course means, can you please forgive me, sweetheart? And I'm hungry to hear those words, because I don't know how to change it myself, but I want to make sure he still doesn't, that he hasn't given up on me, that he still loves me. Yes, it's okay, I still love you. And there's an enormous relief, isn't there? Don't just think that's good. That's guilt, but also it's like hoping he'll get me off the hook. Phew, it's okay still. I'm alright still, That's too demented. That's too berserk. That's too self-centered. Because this process here of regret is for your sake. We're not discussing compassion yet. That comes in the second point. But there's got two parts to the second point. The first part is, who can I turn to? Where's the doctor? So the relationship with God, of course it would be, I must ask God to forgive me, because that's the point. But not here. Well, he will forgive you. He's a nice guy. But it's got zero to do with it. Forgiveness here is not the issue at all. Now this is why it's very interesting, someone asking that question. We often ask, where does forgiveness come into it? Because that's a very big thing for us. Because we have this view that you caused my suffering and I caused your suffering, so I've got to get you to forgive me, and then I have to have you to, then you've got to forgive me, and I've got to forgive you. It's great to forgive, but this is like comes second. The Buddha's view is you've got to take responsibility first and recognize I've done things that are going to harm me. I've got to forgive myself first, which means it's like having compassion for myself. I sowed poison seeds. I ate poison. I did dumb things that if I leave those seeds there, will ripen as my future suffering. This really is what takes time first. So then who can I turn to give me the methods that I can take to help purify this? Not who can I turn to who will forgive me. Not a question of it. So we turn to the Buddha. He's like a doctor. So of course you only turn to the Buddha if you thought about him and you want his methods. You don't just deep in, you've got to decide you want to turn to the Buddha. So this is the second part of this process. You turn to the Buddha, as they take refuge, you rely upon the Buddha. Great, so now we have a decent doctor. The second part of the second step, they talk about reliance. And here in the second part is where we have compassion for those we've harmed. And they talk about it as reliance in the sense that in order to cultivate compassion, I have to have a suffering human being. So in that sense, I need, for me to cultivate compassion, I have to have a person that's suffering. And in this case, the person I harmed. So now I cultivate my regret for their sake. The first regret is for my sake. Because I don't want more suffering. So now I have compassion for those I harmed. I have compassion for my husband. I know what it's like to be abused. I know how painful it is. So that means really owning it for yourself, and then owning it also for his sake, and wanting to change for his sake now. And then of course you think of all the people you harmed, and you regret all of that. And then if you're brave enough, you can think of those who harmed you. do it. And why do I want to have compassion for the person around me? Because they will suffer in the future because of their negative action. So that is up to us, and we're ready for that. The third step is you take the medicine. So here, in this tradition, all the lamas praise a particular meditation and recitation of a mantra as this particular one, as a really like potent medicine. Remember, they often call this third step the antidote. I'm eating poison, I recognise it, I regret it because I don't want suffering, I then turn to the doctor, and then I take the antidote. Here, it can be anything. If you regret killing, an obvious immediate antidote in your daily life to train your mind in the opposite habit is to consciously save lives. If you lie and regret it, one of the antidotes is to try and tell the truth. You do the opposite, it's pretty obvious. But this particular practice is, just the visualization of a Buddha and a recitation of a mantra, which sounds like religious stuff, right? But it's got powerful, again, psychological kind of meaning, these practices. And we take these on as and when we're ready for them, This is the third step in this process. But even if you don't do these Buddhist practices, the third step could be definitely applying the opposite, doing the opposite in your daily life, where you sit there in meditation and visualize light coming and purifying you. But it's your mind that does it. Whatever your mind thinks leaves an impression in the mind. So you imagine white light purifying you. That has benefit, because it's your mind. It's your mind doing something positive, and that has an effect on your mind, immediate. And the fourth step is, in a way, the most important, is when you make a decision not to do it again. And that's the point. I could ask my husband 27 times, please forgive me, I'm bad about him. But at some point, he might not. So until I say I won't do it again, nothing will change. So you've got to regret it first and own it. Own it as something that will harm you. Then I'm going to have compassion. Then I do a practice of purify, and then I vow not to do it again. Well, you don't lie to yourself if it's your worst habit. You maybe say, I won't bad mouthing for 24 hours, but you've got to really make a decision. When we really make the decision, that's when we change. But you can't make a decision to change until you own it as your problem. If I always think it's his problem, I'll never want to change. Therefore, nothing changes. You regret what you did because you see the suffering. You have compassion. You do the practice. The third one, the antidote. And the fourth one, you make these strong commitments to yourself. Give yourself a timeline. So this is like, this practice is really you talking to yourself. You becoming your own friend. And I really mean this, We really do this kind of really constructive thinking with ourselves. Because we're always desperate for someone else to either blame or get us off the hook, Because we can't hold our own stuff. We don't know how we can change it. Are we communicating?
Yes.
I'm glad. Mama's always says we're insane not to do this every day. It's a great way to end your day, to take stock of your day, And it's painful, but it's powerful. And you end up with this strong determination. You've got to make determination. Okay, let's say you're angry with your husband. You've got to determine that maybe for 12 hours I won't bad nothing. And you'll be fast asleep and we'll keep you out. Fantastic. 12 hours, good start. 1 hour, good start. You've got to decide. We all know until you decide, nothing will change. Until you say, I will. That's what volition is, intention. You've got to make a decision and mean it. And that gives you courage to do exactly that. When you finally say, I will go on a diet, that's when you go on the diet. I will do this, that's when you do it. Not vaguely, I should, blah, 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 So it's this power of our own mind. So this practice is really like being your own friend. It's about you, not anybody else. And that means we have to learn to be respectful to ourselves, learn to be our best friend, learn to speak properly to ourselves. And I really mean this. Learn to give, a friend of mine emailed me recently. She said, I've decided I can give myself good advice. Learn to give ourselves good advice. Learn to have respect for ourselves. We're so full of misery and self-pity and sadness and victim mentality, we're not capable. That's why we need friends to help us. That's why we need a good therapist. The function of therapists is to help us become respectful to ourselves, and eventually we don't need that therapist. If we start to do the job ourselves, it's obvious. Because we're not used to talking to ourselves well. We're not used to respecting ourselves. We're not used to giving ourselves advice. Because that's the irony of ego. We think we're the worst person ever, you know. Ego is, the irony of ego is it's self-hate. Self-pity and self-hate, they come together. That's the tragedy. So such a tasty practice. You don't have to do it formally, you know, you just sit there with yourself and you get them, sort of understand these 4 steps, they've got logic to them, you know. And you just talk yourself through it in a different way. It's very healthy, extremely powerful. And this is what changes your mind. As Amiesi says, you know, we create negativity with our mind, but we purify it, we change it by creating positivity with our mind. We have such conviction that I'm a creep. We think, what good is it having positive thoughts? That's absurd. If you're playing the piano and you play the wrong note, the antidote is to play the right note, isn't it? You don't go on about, oh, I played the wrong note, I'm so hopeless, I'm a disaster. And then you play the right note, oh yeah, but I still played the wrong note, I'm so hopeless, no, I played the right note again, but I still played the wrong note. We're so obsessed with it, so concrete. Every time you play the right note, what do? You weaken the tendency to play the wrong note, don't you? That's how you change your mind. The anger's not set in stone. Every time you do the opposite to anger, every time you decide to be patient, you're weakening anger. Don't hold your breath for immediate changes, but it's a gradual, incremental, psychological process. But if you're very convinced you're a creep, very convinced you're bad, then no matter how good your thoughts are, you won't believe you can change. Or you think you don't deserve it, you have really strong guilt. A friend of mine years ago in New Zealand, she got a woman I met, she had an abortion because she was scared to lose the boyfriend, but she discovered he didn't care, and she was devastated by doing this because she wanted the baby. And she had this unbelievable self-loathing and guilt, so depressed. We discussed it, you know, things, and I discussed we can do a purification practice. She says, no, I don't deserve it. This is a tragedy, you know, the irony of ego. That's the function of ego. Self-loathing, concrete, bitter, unhappy, I'm bad. And therefore everybody else is ugly as well, you know. So let's discuss this a bit more, if there's anything to ask, then we'll go to that point. Any questions about this process? Okay. Yes?
You spoke about a mantra. Sorry.
In this, yes, a typical way we do this practice, the third step, is the recitation of a particular mantra and the visualization of a particular Buddha.
Can you share that mantra with us? Or?
Yes, I could. It's a long one, but there's also a short version. So maybe before we finish, I might just lead you through the meditation, so you get the idea. There's lots of variations of these kinds of practices, you know, and I'm also very happy to, these notes that you've got, I've also got versions, more versions of it with this practice in it and other practices. But in the notes you've got, there's 2 teachings about karma and this exact process we're talking about. So you would learn that and understand that, you'll get an idea of how to do it. But I've also sent another one as a PDF, and you can have it as a PDF for your reader or whatever you want. It's got the actual practice. And, you know, it's kind of, we'd hold these down, it's like visualizations of Buddha and all this kind of stuff. But I can do a simple version of it so you can get the idea. And it's just a thing that you do yourself. If you do it as a group, but maybe sometimes in your classes, you know, in your reader, you can start having classes about this and you can have guided meditations on this practice. It'd be very beneficial, very helpful for people. You understand?
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll finish with it, or we'll finish with something like that today. See how we go. Any other questions about this process? Okay. Can't make sense roughly, does it? Yeah, sure. What's the count?
If you take a vow,
Closer to the light, please.
yeah, if you take a vow and you break that vow,
Yeah. Okay.
and you're convinced that you're not quite ready for that vow yet, can you
Well, you
come
just
back
took
to
it. You
that
just told
vow?
me you took it.
Yeah, you still took it, right?
What are you asking? Give it back to somebody.
I mean, isn't that basically like you're lying to yourself?
But is this a real situation or something your clever mind has made up, Sean? You're a very clever mind, Sean. I'm being serious now.
So,
Huh?
well, I
Okay, if it's personal, we should discuss discuss it later. Don't discuss it. If you've got it back, want to give it back, don't do it in public.
Well, no, it's,
Go to the mic, please close up. Is it a personal situation?
it is, yes.
Well, then don't discuss it
Yeah,
here.
forget it.
We'll discuss it with you later. Okay. What else? Yes.
A purification process, is that meditation and mantras part of the purification, or is something different?
Okay. The whole process is these 4 steps. The first one is the acknowledgement that I ate some poison, that I did a dumb thing that is so negative, seed in my mind, and I don't want the future of my suffering results. That's an important first step, isn't it? To recognize, yeah? You agree? The second one is I have, I rely on, we talk about relying, taking refuge. Who can I turn to? Where's my doctor? So that's a formal thing for us, and the Buddha's my doctor. But the second part of that one is I now have compassion for those I harmed. That's the second step, really important. The third step is they call it often the antidote. So like I said before, that can be very practical and simple in your daily life. You decide to do the opposite. Because the antidote to something is the opposite, isn't it? Isn't it? You agree? You understand that point? That's an obvious thing you should do anyway. You can make it like a formal thing. Let's say you killed lots of creatures. You can decide what a formal practice is. You go off and you buy a bunch of worms that will be used for fishing, and you save their lives. That's a stupendous practice. That's a wonderful practice. Do you understand? That's the exact opposite of killing, isn't it? Do you understand? So the antidote to, if you regret lying, an obvious antidote every day in your daily life is to constantly tell the truth. That weakens the tendency to lie, doesn't it? So the antidote, the third step is called the antidote. You with me? That's a typical way of applying the antidote. But there's a particular powerful practice that all the lovers will recommend as a very powerful antidote, which is this one of visualizing a particular Buddha and the recitation of a particular mantra that said to be very potent in helping weaken these tendencies in the mind. Do you understand? And then the fourth step is this decision to change, not do it again, give yourself a timeline. They're the 4 steps. So the antidote can be anything, but this is a particular one that's said to be a very potent medicine, if you like. Do you understand that, Gio? Okay. Yes.
The process you are explaining doesn't seem to be working with the reasons why I'm lying. I mean, it's like I'm lying, I regret it,
Yes.
I don't do it, but I don't know why I'm lying.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, good. No, this is a very good point. Thank you very much. Thank you. When there's a habit like that, and we've all got, the Buddhist view would be it's a very strong habit from bringing it in the past. It's not anything to do with this life. Some of us just naturally lie. Some of us just want to jump on wrong partners all the time because we're addicted to sex. Some of us can't stop eating the food. Some of us can't stop lying. That's karmically, not from something your mummy did to you 10 lives ago. It's from a habit that you brought with you. Like the little fisherman boy, he as soon as this little boy became a fisherman, as soon as he saw fishing, it's like he fell in love with fishing. He became completely a devoted fisherman till the day he dies. Maybe many people fish, but the Buddhist view did that because he's got the habit to keep killing. And he's compelled to kill. And it would break his heart not even to go fishing one day, which you basically could say is an addiction. Do you see what I'm saying? So we've all got these habits. Some people, the serious one, I remember reading one of these serial killers years ago. He talked about when he was a child. He didn't know why, but he was compelled to torture creatures. He didn't know why. So the Buddha would say that's a karmic habit. It's a habit from doing having done it before. That's why so many of the habits we have, that we can't see any reason in this life why we do it. One of my friends was in prison in California. He had quite a well-off family. He was literally addicted to stealing. And he said, I'd walk into that house and I'd see the television and I'd say to myself, I don't need a television, but I couldn't stop myself. Now we can see that even if we're just attached to food, right? We don't know why we're doing it. We can't stop ourselves. Many people don't believe it. They think we're just lying to ourselves. But that's what habit means. That's what the Buddha would say is strong karmic habits. That's why it's painful. That's why it's hard for us to change. And of course in the West we keep looking at what had happened to me in the early part of my life. But the Buddha would say you got born with this habit. So that you can't even look back in the past. Just recognizing it's a habit, that's enough. Don't look for deep psychological reason. No need to necessarily. Necessarily, there's no need to. As we get more advanced in our understanding of our own mind, maybe we can even have a deep memory of the old habit. But it's just simply a habit, and I think that's kind of powerful. Just accept it as a habit, and then see how it's harming you, and then this process of regretting it, even though it's a deep habit, and then vowing not to do it again as best you can, this weakens it hugely. It might still be there. I mean, okay, I'm attached to food. I said that already, right? I don't care about sex. I used to like it, but I'm not attached to it. I don't think about sex, right? To great relief. One of my friends became a monk. He never cared about sex. The second he became a monk, he became obsessed. All he did all day about was girls. He went mad. It went out of his brain. You know, so he had to give up his vows. He stopped being a monk. And then the second he stopped being a monk, he didn't care about sex again. That's sad. So one of the common ones for many people, and I've heard that boys have attachment to sex, okay? I mean, it can be, it's a deep habit. Some people, the thing is, okay. The one way, remember the Buddha's talking about karma, one of the ways our karma from the past manifests in the present is a bunch of tendencies. Here we are with all the tendencies, you know. Some of us, we've all got attachment to different objects. Attachment is very creative in finding objects to be attached to. You understand? Now some of us are attached to food, that's one of my things. Now that means, here I am, I'm getting really close to death. I've got attachment to food, and it's there since I can remember. All my family, since I can remember, always thinking about food, wanting food, not getting enough food, eating too much food, going on a diet, stop going on a diet. Are we familiar when I'm talking about people? Do you recognise what I'm saying? And one of the signs of attachment is it's in your mind all the time, or much of the time. And in other words, the sign of attachment, they say, it's very depressing, is when you think about something when it's not there. Almost most of that time. Now, one of you guys has got a strong attachment to sex, and it's very common. I'm not even criticising. I'm just glad I haven't got that one. That'd be drag. That'd be exhausting. That would be really tiring. I talk to some of my friends, and it's mainly boys. I have to say, girls have it too. But it's mainly boys, it seems. You've got strong attachment to one, jump on a girl. I mean, these old-fashioned jump on girls. Now you can jump on everything, you know. It's been a while. You get my point? When you think of that. So it's really hard to control the thoughts, isn't it? Every time people see a girl, they just want to jump on them. I mean, that must be hard to live with. So that's a habit. That's what it is, the habit. It's just a habit. So it's hard to live with habits because we wish it would go away. And it's very hard not to follow the habit. So that means you've got to use discipline. And this is not easy. It's just not easy. We know that. That's why when we go to AA, they make this the wonderful thing of, I'm an alcoholic and I won't drink for 24 hours. That's brilliant. And they really recognise their habits very deep. So when we have this recognition that the habits come from a past life, not just this life, then you really learn to be really respectful to yourself. You recognise it's a habit and you decide you don't want to follow it every day because it's not going to make you happy and it'll ruin your life. So that it's not easy. So one of the things about practice is, like with me with my food, as an example, I just learn to live with it. You learn to live with it. You know it might never go away till the day you die. You just learn to live with it and you harness it, you're not afraid of it, but you have the courage to not follow it. That's what discipline is. That's why we have to learn to have discipline, because we all know it. You know, if we can just give up the habits and do all the bad things overnight, we'd be saints, we'd be geniuses. But we've got habits. So we've got to recognise this, and my view, of course, I'm taking the Buddhist view, this old habit of, attached to food. I just accept it, and I learn to live with it, and not beat myself up for it all the time. It's just there, chatting away, Do you see what I'm saying? So we don't have to worry about why. A simple why is because you've done it before. And that's really a profound answer, even though it sounds simple. Whereas in the West, we're convinced there's some secret thing that must have happened, and we go to our therapist, and we have to search in the past for like a needle in a haystack. There's the reason you want to jump on girls. There's the reason you want to torture ants. There's the reason you want to eat food. You know, what is it? You won't find it. And it's just exhausting to go and look for it, Just decide it's a habit. I'm not trying to be superficial. It is helpful to unpack it. It's helpful to look at our old... one of the common things we talk about the habit to eat. We say, we're avoiding something else. Every time you're emotional, you jump on the food. Well, of course you do, because it's the simplest thing to do. Because dissatisfaction is massive. The energy of attachment is dissatisfaction. And then we cultivate certain ways to make the pain go away. So for some people it's jumping on girls, for some people it's to buy something, for some people it's to eat food, for some, I mean, look at us, we've all got our own style, right? So of course we have to look at it and look into ourselves and see how we run to that habit just to make all the pain go away. But it's not as if we eat only because we're trying to stop something else. We eat because it's a habit. It doesn't matter what the attachment is, it's just a habit. So that really is in a sense profound. You've got the habit because you did it before. So then you train yourself, that's why the very first step of the practice is controlling your body and speech. You harness your physical and verbal energy and you make an intelligent decision. This is an old habit in my mind, but for my sake, I need to harness it. And then you get stronger in your ability to do it. But don't expect it to go away immediately. With my attachment to food, it's the same. It's always there in my 71-year-old mind, like it was in my 7-year-old mind. Do you see what I'm saying? So you just learn to respect and no big deal. We get braver. And so I think of all my roommates, that's one of my roommates. I just let it be there. I don't pay attention to it. I know it's there chatting away. I don't get upset about it. I don't get angry about it. I don't put myself down about it. Do you understand? So and we learn to get braver in living with these old tendencies and having the courage to not follow them. That's the grown-up part. And it isn't easy, but this is what is practice. This is called practice. So I don't know, is that helpful?